Hey everyone, just give it a few more seconds and then we'll begin. Okay, fantastic. Let's start. So welcome everyone. This is the August delivery team's AMA. So we're here to answer any questions people have around how things get deployed to GitLab and how we do monthly releases or anything else we're working on at the moment. So Victor, thank you for having the first question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I have the first 10 questions or so. Actually, you might be aware of that in products, there is a totally new category and product focus around making GitLab powerful in around deployments, delivery, and environments as well. As a result, the first thing we do is we try to come up with a glossary to speak about this area. And we are in a situation now with this glossary where we decided to test the glossary, and we thought that the best way to test is whether we can describe how the GitLab code base reaches a production infrastructure without using any terms from the glossary. And this, after a while, we got into a bunch of questions that I would like to ask right now, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So the first would be like, how is the deployment rolled out from environment to environment? I know of a few environments, but even feel free to speak about the environments. Today, I saw that the merged CI YAML of the Kubernetes workloads project is 4,400 lines long. And instead of going through that, I decided to ask the question, like, what happens there?
Super. Yeah, Henry, do you want to, I'll type if you want to verbalize.
Yeah, I'm not fast enough at typing. So I just wanted to paste an example pipeline, which I paste in the document here, which will show you that how, for instance, for Kubernetes, we are deploying out over different availability zones. So to speed things up, we just do this two at the same time. But
yeah, sorry, just a problem that nobody has access to the pipelines.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think about this. Yeah, right.
You have to get a screenshot. Describe. Yeah. Or you can share your screen.
Share screen.
Yeah, this is what makes it super hard.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really then hard to explain. That's really true. So
that's why I'm asking.
Let me show you this. So this is an example of deployment into staging.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, we start with building the chart and then go through a dry run. So we can see what Kubernetes wants to apply or what Helm wants to apply to Kubernetes. And then we're going through the non-prod stage here.
Sorry, what does the dry run, what's the difference between the dry run here and the non-prod deploy? Because I mean, I understand the dry run doesn't change anything, but yes. like what do we do there? I mean,
you just see the wanted changes. So if I click one of the jobs, you can see what it wants to do. It just shows you the diff on what will be changed in Kubernetes and doesn't apply it. But exactly this will happen in the next stage here to non-prod in this case. Here we do all AZ's availability zones at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
If this is successful, we go over
one more question. I will stop you all the time here. From the dry run to go to non-prod, is it a manual action or it's automatic? Because you said that there's a plan in the dry run, so I guess you want to review it.
In this case, in the automatic auto deploy pipelines, it's just run, and if it doesn't fail, it will automatically get forward, but nobody is comparing things here. But we have the stage here that for other jobs that we where we commit a change, we just run the dry run, we skip all the rest of the steps here, and we can just see what would it like to do. And then when we merge, it would create a pipeline like this where it would apply this. So up until to the dry run, we see it when we push a change, right? This is the pipeline which runs until here. And then we can see if it will do what we want to do. And then if you're fine with all the diffs inside here, we merge it, and then the rest pipeline with the rest of the changes would be created.
So basically the branches run up to the dry run, and this is the master that we see now producing.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we go through staging, then staging QA, then to Canary, which is just running in one single zone or in a regional cluster, let's say, because Canary doesn't get enough traffic so that it makes sense to split it into different clusters. And if that is successful, we go over to production, but here we split it into 2 phases, alpha and beta. We ended up with that after a while. Previously, we had really the different availability zones like C, B, C, and D, and also the regional cluster. But that would take too much time to do them serially. So we wanted to speed up our deployments. So we just deploy to the regional cluster and one zone here, and here to the other 2 zones in phase beta, just to speed things up and split it a little bit. It's just a thing that we ended up with for production because it was the right compromise between speed of deployments and safeness between different regions and availability zones.
Okay, which of these jobs is manual and which is automatic, or everything is automatic here?
Everything is automatic here.
Okay. One question when we came up with the set of questions was that actually we know that GitLab.com is deployed, I think, twice a day now or something along those lines. It's like, is it a scheduled job that picks this, or?
It's even more complicated. So what you see here, I think, wasn't, so we have auto deployments. This is the thing which is deploying new versions of GitLab everywhere. And a part of this is Kubernetes, which we can see here.
Yep.
Another part is still the VM fleet, which is happening in a different pipeline. And but if you want to do configuration changes, which you can see here in this pipeline, it's the same kind of pipeline, but it's running through or is started when you merge something. And for auto deployments, we have something which is just a big wrapper around all of these different pipelines, which is called the coordinated pipeline, which is running somewhere else in a different project, and will just trigger this pipeline and other pipelines. And there we go through different stages automatically. And but after the Canary stage, we have a manual job to let it wait for 1 hour. Like if you deploy to Canary, wait for 1 hour to see if we see any problems. And if we don't get any problems, we get a notification in Slack. And then the release manager is deciding to manually push a button in the pipeline to promote this to production, because we want to be sure that nothing is happening in there and that we see nice things. We could automate this more because we have alerting and things, and we have things like production checks, which check if we have an incident running and things like that. But still, we want to do this manually at this point.
Yeah, slowly puzzle pieces come together, because Amy spoke about this like 2 weeks ago or something. So basically, if I understand well, GitLab.com is deployed. So if there are only version changes, then an auto deploy pipeline triggers this pipeline and any other pipeline necessary, and that's how we deploy GitLab.com automatically. But when you have a configuration change in your Kubernetes resources, for example, then specifically this pipeline is run.
Yes.
What we see now. Okay. What do you consider a configuration change?
This would be something like I don't know.
Feel free to provide a really extensive answer, because one thing that we have as an entity is the configuration, and the truth is we don't really know what we mean by it.
Yeah. So let's see here. For instance, this was a change where we added some ports for the GitLab web service, for instance. So this is something where we need to in our Kubernetes workflows repository, where we maintain all the code and changes. Yeah,
this is the best pipeline you could show me, because I know this issue. I know this merge request. The whole team knows it, actually. This allows Race to access the CAS on staging and prep prod. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so in this repository where you don't have access, probably we do this change, and then Helm file creates or generates all the Kubernetes JSON files after a while and commits it, and then the pipeline is running and doing the changes and applying them through the different environments. The difference to our auto-deploy pipelines is that we don't allow any configuration change in there, just image updates. So we really have a check to see that we don't do a configuration change at the same time as an upgrade of GitLab. So this is the big difference. And the auto-deploy pipelines are triggered by a scheduled job. And I think they are triggered 4 times a day right now, or even 5 times a day. Sometimes we don't promote the canary to production and at APEC times. We don't have as much release management coverage there, but I think now we have some coverage there, so we normally should be able to deploy 5 times a day, I think.
What if accidentally somebody pushes out 15.0 tomorrow?
Pushes out what?
If someone pushes out GitLab 15.0 tomorrow, would it be deployed using auto-deploy? Because it's a version change.
So no, well, so monthly releases are a very different process to the auto-deploys. So the auto-deploys, no, that would, like, we have the way the tooling generates the package names and the branches, that wouldn't happen. It is theoretically possible that a monthly release could be tagged up wrong, but we have quite a clear process where we go through the steps. So theoretically, it's possible, but it's one of the many reasons where we kind of have like process and like release managers and trained and things like that to avoid those things.
Could you drive me through that as well, like how a month release is how
Yes.
it reaches production?
Can I just tie this back to the agenda a little so people can follow? So just to summarize on the config changes. So generally, I think about, correct me if I'm wrong, like Scarbeck Henry, generally I think about config changes. Config is anything that changes the setup of our clusters or like our infrastructure, but in this case, our clusters. And then the releases are putting out the things that are sitting on top of that. So it's a higher level. So do we already have this one in? So
sorry, Amy, let's get back to this for a moment. One question I would have here is that even when you just put a new, so like with every, how to say that, the configuration for GitLab, I think it's config toml or GitLab. I don't know. So like the base configuration file of GitLab, I never configured GitLab myself. Would you consider that part of the release, or it's part of your configuration?
So if it's not something that would go out to users in self-managed, then it's configuration. If it's something that would get packaged up and released under, like, 15.0 or whatever for self-managed, then it's a part of our releases. If it's something we are changing and configuring ourselves, then no, it's configuration.
Well, let's say it in another way. So we have all the configuration values stored in Chef in a repository, or stored in our Kubernetes workloads repository. And only if some defaults should be changed in a new release, which we don't have values for in our configuration, then that would be applied during a release. But normally we have our configuration values somewhere else, which are applied to our services. And only if we should add new things in a release, like or change default values, which we don't set manually in our configuration, then we could see a change maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking whether the major release is actually interesting to us, that
so the monthly releases,
releases or not, because I'm not sure.
Okay. So just to kind of summarize for other people who might be here. So within our sort of regular release cycle, so every day we are doing auto deploys. They are going to GitLab.com, and we are releasing changes as they come in. And then what we do once a month is we have a monthly release, and everything that has been deployed on GitLab.com up until the release prep date gets bundled together and prepared into the monthly release, which then goes and is packaged and released out for self-managed users. So they're linked, but they're slightly different release processes. They're on different cadences. So we talked a little bit about auto deploys. So auto deploys, an MR package comes in, hits staging, it hits Canary, it hits production. When we're doing the monthly releases, what we're doing is we, at a certain point, everything that has been deployed already to production gets tagged into a release. And then that gets deployed to our pre-environments for testing. And if successful, it goes to our production, our release environment for testing, and then goes through to production. The actual tricky thing about prepping the monthly release is cutting the auto deploy pipeline. So saying this package today is the stable one for the monthly release. And we know we're going to pick up some bugs, we don't get the fixes, or just coordinating what's actually going in, and then sort of the process continues.
Thanks. Cool. Now the next question I would have is, you mentioned this already, that all these deployments sit on an existing infrastructure that's provisioned using another project, mostly using Terraform. And do you have any connection in code, like using Terraform output and remote access when you access these clusters, or actually these projects don't know about each other, let's say?
The projects do not know about each other by default. And we do have a little bit of documentation about this. What we end up doing is, after the necessary clusters and infrastructure are set up via Terraform, and we've got the necessary secrets that enable our CI systems to talk to the clusters, we'll bring over those authentication artifacts over into our CI, and they're managed as variables. And then inside of our K8s workloads repository, for example, we have a configuration that we generate by hand that tells us, hey, this is how you connect to this cluster, use this file or this environment variable that our CI will contain. And that will enable CI to connect to the cluster as necessary. And there's a few helper scripts in there to help blend all this together, because we are talking across a few clusters. Each of them have a different connection, restrictions. So we have to make sure that we're going through the necessary host, or it's got the necessary access to talk to that host. In this case, there's a runner dedicated that has the ability to talk to these clusters.
And here it's like when you bring over the auth tokens, do you do this automatically? So like either using Terraform that sets up the environment variable in the other project, or you do it manually?
That's all manual. So we'll create the authentication tokens in Terraform as a service account.
Yeah.
And we'll pull down the JSON file that Google will provide for us, and we'll put that in environment variable for us manually inside of each of our pipelines, or inside of the ops instance rather.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we'll do that for every project that needs to deploy to Kubernetes, because we have a few of them that do that. So there's at least 3 repositories that has the same information kind of repeated.
So it's not only this Kubernetes workloads repo?
Yeah, we've got a few others. There's at least 2 others, one that we're experimenting with using the Tonka project from Grafana. And then we're also using a set of another project that's dedicated towards bolstering or providing other mechanisms that help us monitor our clusters. Stuff that's not part of the GitLab.com product or our own Helm chart, stuff that we rely on because it's stuff that we had in place for infrastructure prior to us utilizing Kubernetes entirely.
Sorry, I'm taking notes. Cool. Okay, thank you very much. I will go to my next question. Like, what services actually know about our deployments? In the announcement Slack, I've seen that Slack Sentry has a link for all the announcements. So from this, I guess that Sentry is set up with all the releases, and it knows when we release something. Are there other third-party tools that are aware of when we release something to staging and prod?
There's a few. When we do a deploy, we'll send an annotation to Grafana. So if you look at our dashboards, you'll see a line gets created when the deployment starts, and then you'll have a line when the deployment ends, and Grafana will shade that section. We also track our releases. I forget the name of the project. Robert might be able to tell me quickly. But we do track our releases, and this is for the purposes of helping us understand where we are, such that our tooling could notify the appropriate merge requests and add the label saying, hey, this merge request is on this environment and such. And then there's also Elasticsearch. So we have like an event log that says, hey, we've deployed to the API fleet, or we've completed deploying to the Git fleet, etc., that kind of thing.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure there's more.
Yeah, it's enough. We just at least have a rough understanding. I will skip the next question. I think it's you spoke about these parts, and it's not that interesting to get into detail there. So the following one is like we were in a bit of trouble to form this question, but something like, do we treat configuration as an artifact? By this we mean that do we merge various configuration files somewhere? Do we have a hydrated version that we store wherever as a before deployment, or what you consider as a configuration here in the Kubernetes workloads that's as is, and it's once Helm file processes it, it just gets deployed?
So I don't know if what I will convey actually answers your question, but I don't think so. We store our desired state inside of our Git repositories, stuff that's not secrets, rather. So from a technical standpoint, we are version controlling what we want in our clusters to an extent. We don't store the final end result of what those manifests may look like after the fact or when the configuration is generated. All that happens on the fly. That stuff is still stored in our clusters because Helm has its own method of storing that data, but we're not querying or pinging that data ourselves. Just Helm is doing that as part of its own release or deployment process.
Okay, thank you. All the next questions are around secrets. I know a little bit about how our secrets are managed, but I would like to make sure that we have the information here. Like, when are secrets injected into these deployments?
So we have a dedicated Helm chart that's part of the GitLab Kate's workloads, GitLab.com repository, and it's going to query a few places that are necessary for calling our secrets. Most of our secrets are stored in GKMS or inside of our Chef Vault. So depending on what secret object we need, that Helm chart is going to reach out, query for that information using whatever API is available to it. In this case, it's usually using G-Cloud commands to accomplish that goal. And those secrets are not necessarily written in this. They're just kind of pulled out and placed into the manifest that's necessary for Helm to deploy it into the cluster as necessary.
So, okay, as I was typing as well, I probably missed parts of it. So I understood the secrets are stored in GKMS, and we use G-Cloud commands in CI to read the secrets, and these secrets are used mostly for Helm to access the cluster. That's what you said, or something else?
The G-Cloud commands will inject the secret into the manifest that Helm will apply to the cluster.
Okay.
We try to avoid writing the secret out in any way, shape, or form. We try to avoid making sure that CI is not going to accidentally put it out to the screen, that kind of stuff, just so that we don't accidentally leak the secret in any way, shape, or form. So looking at diffs anytime we're updating a secret is not the easiest, because we just say, hey, this changed. We don't tell you or show you what actually changed in that secret object because it may contain sensitive information.
Yeah. Okay, and do we have separate access rights around secrets for the different environments, or?
Yes. So each environment has their own service account. It's limited to just that project only. So you can't take a service account from staging and expect yourself to be able to reach production, etc.
Okay, we are at time. Is there any final questions that people want to throw out there? We can also continue async if people want to add others.
Thanks for all the answers.
Great, thanks for the questions. And Mark, welcome. We have G_delivery is our Slack channel. So if you have questions, feel free to come and chat to us. But otherwise, thanks very much, everyone. I will hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.